right. So I wanted to do another celebrity chart reading video, and I was trying to think of what celebrity to read the chart of, and I thought of Elon Musk, and I was like, yes, that is perfect. I have to read the chart of Elon Musk. He's a figure that I think we're all aware of. He's a controversial figure, which is perfect for me. I do have my own opinions about Elon Musk, which I think may surprise you, but that's not the point of this video. The point is to look at his chart. And his chart is going to be for Monday, June 28th, 1971 at 7:30 a.m. in Pretoria, South Africa. Before I get into the reading, I did want to say that, this is going to be basically typical of what I do for a professional reading. Like I mentioned in the last video, because I did just read the chart of Taylor Swift, and I try to have these celebrity chart readings go a little bit, quicker than I would have for an actual professional reading. But what I've noticed is that a lot of celebrity charts happen to be particularly interesting, and that's kind of why they're celebrities. They have lifestyles that are extreme in some kind of way. So we'll see if that's the case here. I'm not really sure yet. I kind of just threw the chart up. So we're going to explore this together. I think it's more fun that way. But the basic layout, the content, the chapters, those are going to be how I do any reading, whether it be for a client or anybody. Okay, but with this birth information, this means that he has Sun in Cancer with Moon in Virgo and Cancer rising. The first thing, I immediately noticed a few things, three things. One is that his planets are pretty scattered, so that would generally point to a personality that's not as intense. Of course, we will explore the minutiae and the details and kind of get into each planet as we get into this reading. But just like taking a super quick first glance at it, it appears generally pretty well rounded. There's planets over here, planets over there. So I did just notice that can have effects on a person and their personality and things like that. But another thing I noticed is that although his chart is generally kind of scattered and well balanced, he does have, I would say, easily more activity going on in the sign of Cancer than any other sign. And it is really interesting that many of the wealthiest people on Earth have Sun in Cancer or other placements in Cancer. And honestly, I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe you can kind of help me to, speculate why that might be. But it does seem to be a pattern. So that is interesting. That's something I noticed here. But he does have not just rising in Cancer, but Mercury and Sun as well. And Mercury is conjunct the rising. And now I'm noticing a pattern, that I actually mentioned in Taylor Swift's chart. Taylor Swift, Beyonce, and Elon Musk, they all have an inner planet conjunct the ascendant, and they're all massively famous. So, I do think that is a pattern. I have noticed, many celebrities either have many placements at the top of the chart or conjunct the rising. So, that does seem to be a pattern for sure. And I would speculate that combining these Cancer placements with Mercury conjunct the ascendant and Virgo moon, which is ruled by Mercury, it's a lot of thinking energy. Something that I've noticed recently is that people with Cancer placements think a lot. They of course feel a lot, but they also think a lot. They're not necessarily always communicative of all these many thoughts that they're having, but they have this really vivid inner world. Their mind is very, very active. So I'm noticing a lot of overthinking energy, like a lot of, I used to hate the word overthinking because it is a judgment. It does sound negative. I just mean it looks like he thinks a lot. He's going to be a very thoughtful person, constantly thinking, constantly analyzing. Looks like, honestly, his chart to me would point that he may be very emotional as well. I do think that he would be seen as being very intellectual because Mercury is conjunct the rising. That is his whole deal. That's his whole identity. Yes, it's in the sign of Cancer, but Mercury on the rising, that is very powerful. He is seen as intellectual. He's seen as intelligent. He's seen as unpredictable and constantly focusing on new information, new ideas, being very innovative, etc. But something that I noticed is his chart to me looks very introverted. So he has Sun in 12th house Cancer, which is a very private, honestly, that to me would look like a very shy placement, especially early in life. And Moon in second house Virgo, that's also a very private, very introverted kind of placement. So this to me looks like the chart of someone who does think a lot, someone who's very sensitive, and someone who probably spends a lot of time alone, like a lot of time kind of just recharging their batteries. I think their inner, his inner world seems to be so vibrant, by based on looking at this chart, that I think that would be why he would want to spend a lot of time alone. This chart looks to me like the chart of someone who is very stimulated and can be easily overwhelmed because he's thinking so much, feeling so much. He's constantly taking in so much data and information that can be very overwhelming to be in chaotic environments. So he's going to want a lot of time alone to recharge, sort of. Something too, sometimes I forget to talk about the basics and I get into these like specifics. But we can talk about Sun in Cancer, Moon in Virgo. This to me is a very poetic combination. And I know some of, just like with any celebrity reading, some of what I say sounds surprising. Some of what I speculate, based on the charts, may not match up what I perceive with that celebrity or what other people perceive with that celebrity, but I have to just go with what I see. Okay, so I don't personally think of him as being a very poetic person. I don't really pay attention to celebrities, honestly. I'm not like a big fan of anyone in particular, so I could kind of care less like about him or Taylor Swift or anybody. But anyway, so I just want to say, like, I don't view him as being poetic, but his chart though, Sun in Cancer, Moon in Virgo, that's typically a very poetic combination. It's a great combination for like a lyricist, someone who writes lyrics, because you have the emotion of Cancer, but also the intellect of Virgo. Usually, there's some kind of like writing ability or ability with words that comes with strong placements like Moon in Virgo. So yeah, combining that with all this emotion from Cancer, I would think he would be like a maybe a kind of musical person, or maybe someone interested in words, poems, like emotional writing, lyrics, or songwriting, things like that. I don't know if that actually is accurate with him, but that's what I would speculate based on his chart. I did notice as well he has South Node in Leo, which it's another one of those charts. Honestly, in a weird way, this reminds me of Taylor Swift's chart, because well, there is kind of a yod that's in the same. Oh wait, no, technically hers wasn't a yod. I'm getting distracted. What I was going to say is they both have South Node in Leo. They both have charts that when you first look at them, it doesn't stand out to me as a celebrity chart. Like both Taylor Swift and Elon Musk, they don't have many planets high in the sky in the chart. They don't have any planets in the 10th house. They don't have any planets in the ninth house. They don't have any planets conjunct the midheaven. So at first glance, it doesn't look like the chart of a celebrity, but there are these points though, like for example, both Taylor Swift and Elon Musk, they both have South Node in Leo. That's a huge one when it comes to, this means that this person, it's their comfort zone to get attention. Like in past lives, they may have gotten a lot of attention. So it's something they're used to. It's something they expect. It's something they can actually thrive with. It's intuitive to them. It's familiar, if that makes sense. So I did find that kind of interesting to see South Node and Leo in multiple celebrity charts recently. Yeah, what else could we talk about? I did notice Mars in Aquarius conjunct the North Node. With Mars in Aquarius, people that have Mars in Aquarius really care about what their neighbors think of them. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but with Mars in Aquarius, it's a little bit backward, because rather than fighting for what you want on an individual level, it's very tribal. Like if you have Mars in Aquarius, you want to fight for the betterment of your group, but it can go both ways. Like wherever your Mars is, you will fight for that thing, but you'll also fight with that thing. So in this case, Aquarius has to do with the group, the community, society. So having Mars there, it means he wants to fight for those things. He wants to fight for society, for the future, for ideas and concepts that can change the world. But he also is fighting like with the group as well. So on the one hand, he does want to maybe be liked and be respected, or he wants to have a good status with society, with the public, with his community, etc. But on the other hand, I can see that there might be a source of contention there as well. And that's true for anyone that's born with Mars in Aquarius. I think this is obviously a more extreme example of those things. But that would be true for everyone though on some level with that placement. It is interesting Mars being conjunct the North Node, so I think this is something that he's battling with. Maybe I would think it's something that he may have grown into over time, but when he was young, I would speculate that he may have been very passive. He wouldn't want to fight. Like combining Mars conjunct the North Node with these Cancer placements, with these Virgo placements, all of it suggests someone who's a little bit more passive to me. His fighting ability would be learned at a later age. It wouldn't be something that's innate, you know. So especially when it comes to like, well, I mean, on some level, he always was able to stand out in the sense of getting a lot of attention. Like that's South Node in Leo makes that very clear. But when it comes to like actually really putting yourself out there in a kind of divisive sort of way, you know, fighting for what you believe in, I think that would come later in life, judging by Mars conjunct North Node. What else can we talk about? Let's kind of just look around. Saturn's in Gemini, so that would indicate maybe being a little bit socially awkward, especially early in life. Venus is also in Gemini, though, so there is huge potential there. Um, Usually I don't run out of steam in this chapter till about 20 minutes in, but I feel like I've covered the basics. Let me just make sure I haven't missed anything. Yeah, I just see a person that's very private, very sensitive, shy, but yeah, a deep thinker, a deep feeler. With Mercury conjunct the ascendant, I don't think this is actually accurate, but I would think that he would be very slim, which I don't think he is, but that's what I would anticipate based on Mercury conjunct the ascendant. Um, Usually, when you have strong Mercury placements, it makes a person more likely to be tan. But Mercury and Virgo, they're such malleable energies, it totally depends on what you combine it with. Cancer is usually more of a pale sign, you know, so it makes sense with Ascendant, Sun, Mercury, and Cancer. Moon and Virgo would kind of just blend with Cancer. I think those are his two most dominant signs. So it does make sense he'd be more on the pale side, despite that heavy Mercury influence. Mercury would just kind of blend with Cancer, blend with these lunar energies. Oh, it is interesting as well, kind of reinforcing this whole Virgo Cancer dominance in this chart. When we look at the chart ruler, you know, the ascendant is Cancer, therefore the chart ruler is the moon. Moon is in Virgo, so it's actually ruled over by Mercury. Mercury's in Cancer, so it's ruled by the moon. Moon is ruled by Mercury. Mercury's ruled by the moon. They're in mutual reception. They're both final dispositors, if you want to get technical. So they're it's like they're both working hand in hand to kind of control and dominate this chart. It's impossible to say. It's impossible to say which one is stronger, I think, because you know you would typically say Moon is stronger because it's the chart ruler, but Moon not only being ruled over by Mercury, but also Mercury being conjunct the ascendant, you know, you can't separate the two. So when it comes to planetary rulers, it's very clear to me that Mercury and the Moon are very strong. I think they really overpower everything else in the chart. So that's an interesting combination. Like Mercury's the energy of thoughts, Cancer or the Moon and Cancer are the energy of feelings. So he's all about thoughts, all about feelings, constantly thinking, constantly feeling. I didn't realize, you know, this is another celebrity that I haven't perceived as being very emotional or sensitive, but that's what I would see based on his chart. With Sun in the 12th house, though, that would suggest that he's very misunderstood, especially early in life. He really suppressed his whole ego, his whole personality for whatever reason. He either had a lot of trauma or he was around a lot of strong personalities. So he felt that he couldn't express himself. He kept his whole personality. He basically like suppressed into the subconscious at a young age. So having that placement, it suggests that he's been a late bloomer, that he didn't really start being much more vocal, much more active, much more vibrant with his personality until later, like maybe his 20s or sometimes late teens, sometimes early 30s. Like it kind of just depends. But Sun in 12th house is a late blooming placement. It also suggests that he may have spiritual or psychic abilities that he has inherited from his father's side of the family. And what else? It also suggests that he's very open to ideas, concepts that are very strange, anything having to do with aliens or spirituality or ideas that are controversial. He would be very open to because of his sun in 12th house placement. And a lot of what I'm saying, you can break it down by placement. That would be true for anyone that has sun in 12th house. Everything I just rattled off about being open to strange things, having spiritual abilities from the father side of the family, that's true for you too if you have sun in the 12th house. Okay, let's move forward. I don't want to belabor this anymore. In this next chapter, we're going to talk about his past life themes, his karma. We'll talk about his major challenges in this life, as well as potential, and we'll talk about his upbringing as well. It's kind of a junk drawer, this chapter, and it's very heavy, usually. So looking at past life themes, I really just looked to the South Node, to be honest. And South Node here is at 15 degrees Leo. It's actually conjunct my Venus. That's kind of weird. But anyway, South Node is at 15 degrees Leo in the first house. So to me, that suggests in a past life he was very independent, like a very strong personality. And I wouldn't go as far as to say that in a past life he was necessarily like a celebrity or a ruler or anything like that. But I do think he was someone that got a lot of attention. Everyone kind of knew who he was. So maybe he was, kind of a celebrity on a more local level, or, at least with those that knew him, like everyone, he had a really strong personality, is what I'm seeing. Very outgoing, very charming, very individualistic, but also potentially very generous as well. But it looks like he was just extremely independent. Like he did whatever he needed to do. It was all about him. But having such a strong personality, others may have relied on him for that. So in a past life, I could see him being like an entertainer or performer. I could also see him being a business person, like just anything involving a really strong personality, like a really outgoing, fiery, passionate kind of, individuality. That's what I see for his past life. And again, it looks like he was a master of, handling attention, being charismatic, being charming, but also like doing dramatic things to get attention. That's that's what I see for his past life. And to some extent, that spills over into the childhood as well. That's why South Node gives you a great idea of past life themes, but it also tells you what a person was like as a kid. So, combining South Node in first house Leo with IC in Libra, it's an interesting, I think that's a very complementary balance. So it looks like as a kid, I would speculate that he was very charming and very pleasant. He had this combination of being like kind of an ambivert, I guess you could say, like outgoing and doing very well with attention and being, very charming, but also, having more of like an easygoing kind of charm as well. Kind of, he was simultaneously energetic but also easygoing, and I think that would make him very popular as a kid, as far as I can tell. He's someone who did like being very engaged and hands-on, but also more passive activities as well, things that had to do with like writing or creativity. He would be into that too. So it looks like he was a very well-rounded kid, as far as I can tell. Sun and the moon sextile, that would suggest to me that his parents were somewhat similar. They worked as a team. They got along well enough. They were both involved in his upbringing. His father looks like he may have been kind of troubled. Like, the sun in the 12th house indicates that his father may have been there physically, but maybe not always mentally. Like, he may have suffered from mental health issues or maybe like addictions as well. I'm not accusing, like, it could be different things. There's different reasons why someone might be mentally absent. But part of it has to do with what I said earlier about there are some kind of psychic or spiritual abilities that run on the father's side of the family. And I think it's common that, when you have that kind of consciousness, it's common to, that can be a struggle, that can be hard. And so I do think many people that have those abilities are more likely to have mental health issues and or, addictions as well. So that's kind of what I see on the father's side of the family. I do see his father as being very involved with his upbringing, though. Saturn is direct. Saturn's in a pretty strong house. Sun is close to the ascendant. All of those indicators show a very present father. So it looks like his father may have struggled with his own mental health and things like that, but it does look like he was a very involved father. The mother, I think, would be very involved as well, but maybe not quite to the extent of the father. Moon is in the second house, which also forms kind of a strong, angle, sort of, not really, to the ascendant. It is at least roughly close to the ascendant, like it's on the left side of the chart, I guess you could say. As far as I can tell, he's close with his mother as well, but I would speculate he's closer to his father than his mother. And I don't know if any of this is true. If anyone knows about Elon Musk, or if you want to research, feel free to back me up, or disprove me if I am incorrect with anything. But yeah, that's what I would speculate based on his chart. Let's go back to talking about his evolution, his challenges, his potential. So it's interesting. North Node and Saturn are kind of similar in a way. They both have to do with what direction are we going toward in this life? What are we seeking to learn in this life? Where are we going? What direction are we headed? Both the North Node and Saturn are in air signs. So that would suggest that, especially at a young age, he may have really struggled with other people. He may have either had social anxiety, he was like socially dysfunctional, maybe shy, awkward, anxious. For whatever reason, he didn't feel comfortable with interacting with other people. He may have not felt comfortable with groups of people. He may have just wanted to kind of just do his own thing. Um, you know, it is interesting with South Node in Leo. I'm doing my best not to contradict myself, because on the one hand, it does look like he thrived with getting attention and being charming, especially when he was very young. Like, I think that would be very strong for him. But I think he could do those things in a way that actually separated himself from other people and allowed him to not actually interact with others. I know that sounds weird, but like, on some level, like, even when he was very young and not yet like famous or anything like that, I could see that he may have actually been very comfortable being popular, because I think being popular or famous can actually be very isolating, but I think he would actually enjoy that and be comfortable with that. He may like the isolation that comes with being famous or well known. And I'm not just talking about celebrity status, but even as a young child, if you're like, oh, the super cool kid and everyone wants to be your friend, is anyone actually your friend though? You're kind of on a different level than everyone else. So that's what I see for him. I see him actually kind of thriving with that. It's gonna, it may have been harder for him, especially when he was younger, to actually like interact with others, actually, talk about yourself and listen to others, actually have real relationships and conversations. He may have really shied away from all of that and preferred to just be on his own. Another part of this too is that he does have, I would say, water, fire, and earth more strong in his chart than air. And I know he does have a few major air placements. Venus and Mars in particular, those are pretty major placements. But what I'm getting at is, with Saturn and North Node both in air signs, he may struggle with, like, he may be one of those people that takes things very seriously. That again reminds me of Taylor Swift's chart, which a big part of that is because I just read it. It was the last celebrity chart I read, but she also lacks air, so I just thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, the air element makes things light, breezy, less serious, more detached, more, you can kind of just sit back and laugh at things, not take things so seriously. That's the energy that I do think he can lack a little bit. He may struggle with that. Like, and there are different pros and cons to that. Having high standards and putting your feeling into everything, that can be extremely powerful. And clearly it has been powerful for him and for Taylor as well. But part of the lesson here that I think he's struggling with, and that, perhaps he's learned as he's matured, is, you don't always have to take everything so seriously. There doesn't have to be so much ego in every little thing. Sometimes we can kind of just, roll with the punches, be experimental. And, and also part of it, again, is truly interacting with others. It is interesting that North Node and Saturn are not only both in air signs, they're also in houses that have to do with social themes. So, in other words, South Node is in first house, which indicates he wants to be on his own, do his own thing, be very independent. That comes naturally to him. North Node is in the seventh house, which indicates challenges and growth needed to be done, involving like one-on-one interactions, relationships, etc. Saturn is in 11th house Gemini. 11th house has to do with society, the community, public relations. So that's also, it all points to social dysfunction or learning to be done there. And I want to be very clear. I'm not saying he would be socially dysfunctional for his entire life. I'm saying he would start out that way, and then most people tend to rise up to these challenges. And that's another commonality between Saturn and North Node. Both show challenges early on in life, but there's the potential for to become a master in these areas later in life. So for him, he may have started out very socially awkward, uncomfortable, not knowing how to express himself with other people, not knowing his role with other people. But I would speculate, going into his 30s, 40s, etc., he has likely learned his role. He's learned how to express himself and interact with people. Uh, could there be some lingering awkwardness there? Sure. But again, most of us can develop this really strong, um, unique part of ourselves in that area where those placements are. So in other words, he may be very strong and actually a leader when it comes to interacting with others, because he's developed the way he socializes is very unique. It's something he developed on his own, if that makes sense, because he started out life not knowing how to do those things. Let's talk about his career. I do always say I try to keep these readings brief, so maybe this will actually be a brief one. Um, let's talk about his career. So I did notice that, yes, he does have a lot of introverted placements, a lot of Cancer, a lot of Virgo, a lot of Moon and Mercury. These can be very inwardly focused energies for sure. But I did notice his midheaven though, which is at 28 degrees Aries. That really points to someone who like, people with Aries midheaven struggle to be an employee. Like, they can't just work for someone else at a mindless job and just have some dumb manager like bark orders at them, and that doesn't work for an Aries midheaven person. More so than any other placement. So it kind of doesn't surprise me that midheaven in Aries that's like the perfect placement for being a business owner or doing something on your own, being some kind of manager, some kind of leader. With midheaven and Aries, you need to either completely do something on your own, or if you do work for someone, there are certain conditions that need to be met. For an Aries midheaven person to be happy working for someone else, first of all, whoever they're working for, they have to truly respect. And then number two, they also still need a lot of room. They need a lot of room to breathe. They need a lot of autonomy. So in short, Aries midheaven, very autonomous, very much a leader, a business owner. That's the energy of Aries midheaven for sure. Yeah, and I think especially when we combine that with the rest of the chart, he does have two. It's interesting because he doesn't have any fire planets at all, but Aries midheaven and Leo south, no, those are two major fire placements. So on some level, he wants to do things on his own. He doesn't mind standing out in a really dramatic way. And with all of that Mercury and Moon energy, he's so immersed in his own thoughts and feelings that, to me, it's really clear that he's very much charting his own path. Like, it reminds me of Aquarius, even though, I know he does have Mars and North Node there, but this chart seems like Aquarius to me for some reason. Like, I don't know how that even makes sense. I think that's coming to me more intuitively than logically, if that makes sense. There's something about, I don't know, it's a weird mix, like combining Virgo, Cancer, and Aries. In a weird way, it almost reminds me of Aquarius because, this person is so thoughtful. They have such deep feelings as well. They really want to stand out on their own. They want to do their own thing. And again, coming back to needing so much time to be alone and to recharge, like he's really going his own way. So it doesn't surprise me that he would have a really unique personality. Like, this person's a weirdo. This person comes up with their own ideas, their own feelings. They're gonna have their own course in life as well as in their career. They're really gonna do something different than what everyone else is doing. Yeah, that's pretty much, I think it's rather simple. He's a business owner. I guess it actually makes it harder for me knowing things about the person that I'm reading the chart of. Knowing that he is like very innovative, that kind of makes sense with his chart being so independent and so immersed in his own thoughts and feelings. One last thing about the career: the planet closest to the midheaven is Saturn. Saturn is in the 11th house. So his biggest challenges in life are going to have to do with the public, society, community, etc. Also, maybe like professional connections, like colleagues. I wouldn't say coworkers because I don't think this person has coworkers. With Midheaven and Aries, he's doing his own thing. There's no one else on his like level, so to speak. But people that he works with, like professional connections, that those are the areas that may have the largest challenges for him in this life. All right, lastly, let's talk about his romance and compatibility. I'm kind of looking forward to this for some reason. I think there are some clear patterns here. I always say I look to Venus, Mars, and the descendant for most of the bulk of attraction, romance, compatibility, etc. Venus, Mars, and the descendant, in different ways, they all have to do with what we find attractive and what we are compatible with romantically. For him, he has Venus in Gemini, Mars in Aquarius, and descendant in Capricorn. Okay, so one thing that stands out to me is these are all very detached signs. Like none of these signs are particularly emotional. So that would suggest to me he's attracted to someone who is not emotional. If anything, he would be the more emotional one. And again, I know he doesn't come across as super emotional, but he's got Sun, Mercury, and rising in Cancer. He is emotional. He is sensitive. He doesn't want someone else who is that sensitive or emotional. He wants someone more cool, calm, detached, like nothing bothers them. Well, I wouldn't say nothing bothers them, but nothing riles them up emotionally, I guess is what I meant to say. Let's look at Venus and Mars. They are more or less in agreement. They're actually trining, so that's pretty cool. That means he's very in touch with what he finds pleasurable, what he's attracted to is very kind of clear cut. He knows exactly what he finds attractive, and he knows how to get what he wants, generally speaking. But that being said, Venus and Mars are both in very intellectual signs. They're both in air signs. And, Gemini and Aquarius in particular are very much focused on ideas, and they're very experimental, and they're kind of weirdo signs. So this would indicate, to me, it indicates he's attracted to someone really unique. He wants someone who's a little bit weird, someone a little bit out there, someone really thoughtful and very intelligent for sure. Someone who knows a lot about many different subjects, someone who may have kind of a provocative appearance, maybe like someone who doesn't fit in with society. They're their own thing. They're super weird and interesting and unique. That's what he would definitely be attracted to. So yeah, air signs stand out to me for sure. Gemini and Aquarius probably more so than Libra. Libra's a little bit different because it's not so radically experimental like Gemini or Aquarius are. Libra's more focused on like social graces, and it's much more careful and cautious. I don't think he'd be interested in that. He wants someone really like hyper intellectual, and all about ideas and information. Someone who is, kind of out there, like I said. Libra's not really out there. Libra's more of a vanilla sign. So that could work. Libra does have, that intellect, that overthinking energy, very analytical, intelligent. That could be attractive for him. But, Libra forms kind of awkward angles to, well, I guess you could argue Gemini does too, but I don't know. I think Gemini and Aquarius would be a better match. Really, all the air signs do form awkward angles to his Sun, Mercury, Ascendant, Moon, etc. But I think the difference is, he does have so much Mercury energy. He's got Moon in Virgo. Virgo is intellectual and analytical like an air sign, especially more like Gemini or Aquarius. So I do think there could be those commonalities there that could form a sort of bridge. I could see him being attracted to Libra because he has so many Cancer placements, and many Cancers and Libras are attracted to each other, people with major placements in those signs. So I could see him being drawn to that, but I could maybe see that working. But what I've observed is that Libra and Cancer often have kind of contentious relationships because at first glance they feel like they have more in common than they actually do for reasons that I won't get into. And because Libra and Cancer is square, there's always going to be a little tension there. That can be fine for some couples, but both Cancer and Libra, neither one likes tension. So the tension really bothers them. Both don't really want to address the tension, but it kind of just festers. So that's why I notice many Cancer Libra relationships, and they tend to be contentious. So I could see that happening for him. It wouldn't surprise me if his wife did have major Libra placements. Would I recommend that though? No. I would look at Gemini or Aquarius more. Gemini and Aquarius won't mind the tension as much. There still might be a little bit of tension because basically he wants someone very different from himself. Like, he has hardly any air placements other than Venus and Mars, so that it's very much like what he's attracted to is very clear. He wants those air placements. He wants someone detached, intellectual, unique, quirky, etc. It's just going to be an energy that's very different from himself. So he needs someone who is those things, but who's also receptive to what he is. So it's one of those situations where he's earth and water. He needs someone who is like air, though. And specifically, he needs someone who is air, who wants earth and water, right? So that they're attracted to him as well. I did want to mention, too, that with Venus and Mars both in air signs, he may feel really uncomfortable expressing himself emotionally, being emotionally vulnerable, especially with a romantic partner. So someone who does have air in their chart will understand that, they're not going to be the most emotional person either. So they'll be comfortable, like he may be a little bit detached with how he goes about, attraction, dating, relationships, etc. So matching him with a detached personality, someone more cerebral, I think makes a lot of sense. So yeah, air signs definitely for sure. Aquarius would be interesting. I think he would really enjoy Aquarius. On some levels, he would kind of relate to them because Aquarius is a sort of genius sign. They very much, have their own path. They do things their own way. Aquarius will kind of teach him a lot because of his North Node. That can be a double-edged sword because going with the sign of your North Node, it can help you to learn and grow, which can be exciting, but it can also be draining. It can be a constant challenge, and nodal energy is unstable as well. So a relationship with Aquarius for him will be exciting. It'll result in a lot of growth and expansion, but it will also be unstable, constantly changing, and sometimes challenging. And with Mars and Aquarius, Mars is also a double-edged sword because going with the sign of your Mars can be very sexy, it can be very passionate, but can also be irritable or annoying or combative. So Aquarius is an interesting one. I see that as being potentially very attractive, very fun, but also very maybe intense or challenging as well. Gemini looks much more attractive. Venus is there. I think Gemini can get along with Virgo and Cancer as well to some extent. Any placements very early in Gemini, in a person that he is around, may be challenging for him because of his Saturn at 1 degree Gemini. But Gemini, so far I like Gemini more than any other sign for him. I did notice just now that Saturn is conjunct the Pleiades, and that's interesting because I believe in a lot of I've listened to a lot of channeled material, like Barbara Marciniak and stuff like that. I don't know if you're familiar with any of that, but the Pleiades are around 0 degrees Gemini. You could even argue between 29 Taurus and 2 or 3 Gemini, something like that. So he's got Saturn right on the Pleiades, and I do believe Elon Musk is a starseed, and I do believe he's not from the Pleiades. Basically, what I'm getting at is his Saturn placement suggests to me that he may have beef with the Pleiades. The Pleiades may represent a challenging energy for him, like the Pleiadians or what have you. May represent challenges or delays for him, and that actually makes sense from what the Pleiadians, channeled by Barbara Marciniak, they're not the biggest fan of Elon Musk. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. But anyway, that was all very theoretical. I think there is something to that though. Okay, but going back to compatibility and attraction, air signs for sure, mostly Gemini. But his descendant is in Capricorn. So when you have your rising in Cancer and descendant in Capricorn, that means you're attracted to someone who really has their shit together. He may be attracted to someone older or more experienced than him in some other kind of way. Someone very mature, responsible, someone who's really got a grip on life. They're very mature. They've got, money is taken care of. they've really taken care of themselves financially as well as with their status. And it's not just materialistic, it's really about like having a grip on your life basically. So that's what he's seeking more than anything else. He wants someone to kind of be in control. Like he doesn't want to be in control in the relationship. He wants the person that he's with to kind of dominate in a way, if I'm being honest. Um, he would be the more nurturing person in the relationship. He'd be the more kind of out there person, the more spontaneous one, the more emotional one, the one with the big ideas. He's attracted to someone who's more grounded, someone, more mature, dry, detached. I always say like he would be the dreamer, and what he wants is more of a rock, if that makes sense. So that being said, Capricorn could be a great sign for him. Capricorn, he has a moon in Virgo, so he's going to deeply understand people who have major earth placements as well. So definitely Capricorn. Capricorn descendant also indicates he has very high standards as well. Just throwing that out there. So Capricorn could be great. Virgo could be great since it is similar to Capricorn and his moon is there. So it suggests, he may have very deep connections with people who have major placements in Virgo. Virgo, I think, gels with his other signs. It, sextiles Cancer. It squares Gemini, which I think that actually works pretty well. So yeah, someone with major Virgo placements, that could be interesting. So far I'd say Gemini followed by Capricorn and Virgo. Virgo may be the best of both worlds because it's intellectual and analytical like an air sign, but it's also an earth sign like his descendant. It's practical, down to earth, heavy. It's a heavy energy, but also analytical, intelligent. So yeah, Virgo may actually be very interesting for him. Gemini, Capricorn, Virgo, I think are my favorites so far. Uh, Taurus, I'm not as in love with. He has no planets there. Taurus is a sign that it's an earth sign. It's heavy, down to earth. Taurus is going to be generally responsible. They're going to have their shit together. So Taurus does have a lot of what he's looking for. What Taurus lacks, though, is that Taurus is so stable. It looks like Elon wants someone complex, interesting, dynamic, provocative. Like Taurus is very just like middle of the road, even keel, very stable. I think he may be bored with Taurus. Like they may get along great, but like I don't see the passion being there for him. I don't see him being attracted to Taurus. He wants someone more analytical, more cerebral, more kind of out there. I don't see that matching up with Taurus. Even Capricorn is at least kind of private and individualistic, so there's some kind of mystique there. I think that would be more interesting for him. But Taurus is just what you see is what you get. I think he wants someone more complicated. He wants someone complex. So, yeah, I don't really like Taurus for him. I like Gemini, Capricorn, Virgo, maybe Aquarius or Libra. But mostly Gemini, Capricorn, Virgo. But just for fun, let's go through the fire and water signs. I definitely don't see those being as attractive to him. He wants someone with air and earth in their chart for sure. Someone logical, detached, whatever. Someone cool, calm, and collected. Yeah, I think he'd shy away from these more passionate, really emotional, like spiritual, soulful kind of types that would be, fire and water. Let's do water first. So he would relate to water signs maybe more than any other element, but again, it's one of those situations where, yeah, he'd have a lot in common with them, which would make for an easy friendship, but I don't see that being attractive for him romantically, though. So Cancer in particular, I could see a really great friendship, and maybe, like, let's say someone has Cancer Sun, but then they've also got, Moon, Venus, Mars in, like, Gemini and Virgo, or Capricorn or Aquarius. It can be more complicated. Like, if someone has a water placement, but also some earth or air, that would make sense because, like I said, I think he'd really find it easy to be friends with Cancer or maybe other water signs. But there's got to be some earth or air in the other person's chart for it to be a romantic connection, though. Water signs are on their own are just going to be friendship material. So Cancer in particular, I see that completely being the friend zone unless there is another influence in the other person's chart. Scorpio could be interesting. He would enjoy how deep and complex Scorpio is and how intelligent and analytical they are. But the huge challenge, though, is that he's detached with relationships. Scorpio is the opposite of detached. They're so passionate, so emotional. I see a huge challenge, a huge discrepancy there. It's going to be really hard for him to understand and work with a Scorpio. He's just so detached with how he approaches relationships. It's just that to me seems fundamentally incompatible with Scorpio. And then for Pisces as well, really it's the same. Water signs, generally speaking, want close knit relationships. They want something, touchy feely, lovey dovey. He's not going to be that person. He's much more detached with relationships. So that's going to be off putting and cold in the eyes of any water sign. And he may view water signs as being like overly emotional, too sensitive, too controlling. That's how. It's not that water signs are necessarily controlling, it's just that they want that close knit relationship. So he may feel kind of drowned by a water sign. So I don't see that working at all. I could see him being friends with them for sure. He could have great conversations with Scorpio. He may find Pisces very familiar and friendly, but I don't see it romantically though. And then lastly would be the fire sign. So he does lack fire energy. We can be attracted to the element that we lack because it's exotic, it's different. That person's going to have different strengths than we do. It'll be very complimentary, very exciting, very passionate. But generally, those dynamics are more difficult to maintain in the long run, though, because of our differences. We're so different. Differences can be exciting, they're also difficult to maintain in relationships. So that's kind of what I see for fire signs, especially if he's at a moment in his life where he's like really branching out and wanting to experience something new. That's where I could see him being attracted to fire signs. But again, for that to last, it's going to take a lot of work. Leo in particular, he may have a deep connection with because of his south node. But other than that, fire signs are just so. Fire signs are so impulsive and they just live in the moment. They don't really overthink things, other than Sagittarius. But even Sagittarius can be very bold, very impulsive. He's the opposite of that. He's constantly thinking about everything and feeling about everything. I think he would. I think him and a fire sign would drive each other crazy. A fire sign would go, "Why do you think so much about everything? Just forget it. Just have a drink or something. Just stop thinking about everything. Just live life in the moment." And he would feel the opposite. He'd feel like fire signs are just. I think he's so intellectual too. Aries and Leo in particular are not really intellectual. Sagittarius is intellectual, so he may at least be able to have some deep and like philosophical conversations with them. But beyond that, though, I don't see him becoming really close to Sagittarius. I definitely don't see a romantic attraction there. So yeah, really fire and water signs are awkward for him romantically speaking. Friendship wise, I could see him definitely being friends with water signs. Not as much fire signs. I think he's least compatible with the fire element. Let's just put it that way. Okay, but yeah, I'm glad this ran slightly shorter than some of my other readings, but this was fun to do. Let me know your thoughts. I don't know what you'll think of this. I know there's a lot of different opinions about this dude. But yeah, thanks so much for hanging out with me for this hour. If you would like a reading like this one, definitely check out my website. I will link it. I always link it in the end, kind of like, I was going to say end credits, end screen, whatever it's called. But anyway, yeah, check that out if you would like to. I really appreciate it. And give this video a like, a comment if you can. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.